I'm from the Midwest. I started modeling in, Chicago, doing catalogs. Did belt modeling once where my face wasn't even in the picture. And, when I finally got to New York, I didn't know anything about anything. I just came to New York. I didn't know how to catch a cab. I didn't know the light had to be on. I wondered why some cabs stopped and some didn't. And then it was like, oh, the light has to be on. But no one told me that. My mother didn't wear any makeup. I just didn't know anything about anything.
No point of reference.
Yeah.
But talk about a point of reference.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone had a point of reference, I think I definitely did. So for me, it wasn't a foreign world to go into. I definitely felt like I understood it. I knew what I was kind of getting into. I'd been around it a lot. I definitely think there are some things that no matter how much somebody can tell you about, the industry, there were a lot of things you do have to learn firsthand. So for me, it was definitely less scary to go into. I have so much appreciation for women like my mom and the other girls who come, they don't know anything. A lot of the times English isn't even their first language. So for me, I definitely had a unique experience going into the industry.
And I think one of the things that I did, and Kaya certainly has done and has more access, is like, when you go to work with a photographer or designer, is like do your homework. And because I want to have a language, like if I know this photographer shoots this way, when I get to set, I kind of already know what language we might be speaking that day, as opposed to just walking in and not knowing anything about the editor or the designer or the photographer. And I know already by the time Kaya started in the fashion industry, she was pretty well versed. She teaches me stuff all the time, designers and young photographers, and just, being prepared, which is good advice for any job, by the way, but it also applies in the fashion industry. But that brings
us up to a very curious thing that really is a dynamic that is happening now, which is social media.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really a definitive change for you, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And that was something that my mom couldn't really teach me. We were learning it together, especially starting in an industry that was so heavily influenced by social media when, that didn't exist when she was doing it. And I think, it's benefited models and the industry as a whole in a lot of ways. I feel like we've become a lot more accessible, but when I see images of my mom from when she was modeling, it was very selective. You're seeing her on the cover of Vogue and that's it. And so I think it allowed for people to have this kind of fantasy or fascination with models at the time, because you weren't seeing them every single day. You were seeing them shot by these incredible photographers with a whole team of people. And, now as models, you see us from the second we wake up until we go to sleep, and you're not just seeing us all done up, which I think is really nice to realize, you're not always looking like you look on the cover of Vogue, but it also takes away a bit of that kind of magic and almost suspense for what's going to come out next.
I don't think my generation grew up wanting to be models. You didn't even really think that it was a real job. And then it was like the supermodel moment. And then I really think, when I look back on it, it was like America's Next Top Model, Tyra Banks made everyone believe, all of a sudden, you too can be a model. And then social media happened right after that, and it was like everyone not only could be a model, they were a model in their everyday life. I mean, there isn't a 12-year-old that doesn't know how to take a great selfie and how to retouch it perfectly. And so when people would say, well, how could you let Kaya start modeling so young? I'm like, every young person is modeling in their own life. What I miss about the old days, without sounding like my mother, good old days, is that when you're shooting with film and there was no monitor, all the attention was on the set, on the model. So there was an aspect that you were performing in front of the hair, the makeup, the stylist. Everyone's eyes were on you. And when you're receiving that, you put it on, you perform. And then all of a sudden, and I think really the first person that I knew that was really using digital was Michael Thompson. And all of a sudden, everyone was hovered around the monitor, and I'd be standing on set guys, I'm over here, I feel alone. And so that was a big shift for me. Now for Kaya, she grew up with digital. It's rare that
Yeah.
you shoot on film.
You know, now you already see the cover laid out on set in front of you.
And retouched.
They'll be retouching in front of you, and I'm like, okay. But I think, you know, it's cool to have that immediate, like, you can see it and you're doing it, and you can build off of that. But yeah, I definitely do think that film, there was like a more personal connection, and it is a performance that you're putting on to some aspect. So,
well, and what I've noticed is sometimes, like, when they're like, okay, we got it, because they see it big. And sometimes that next thing that was going to happen was like the unplanned thing, you know, or for instance, sometimes you're modeling and you'll do something that looks bad, but the next thing was going to look good. But they'll stop you at the bad. And don't you remember we used to be like, okay, now we've got it. Let's just do 2 roles for the heck of it and throw it away. And that might be where the magic is.
I think that when, you know, Vogue has adopted the 18-year-old policy, which is very, very important. I mean, I did start when I was 15. You started when you were young. But I had a very, very protective mother who was really looking after me and was making it, you know, I didn't,
Yeah.
and also
So
I was
did
a
she.
model, so I didn't
Mind
have
you.
to pursue it.
still, right there.
Right, you had the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a way, I think, to start a conversation with the fashion industry.
When these rules came into play, you know, between my first and second season doing shows was when the rules fully came into effect. I remember the first time I really noticed someone ask me on set, oh, can I tuck your shirt in? And for me as a model, I had never thought about that. But suddenly when they asked me, I was like, you know what, that makes sense, right? Like, it is appropriate to ask, can I tuck your shirt in? And that definitely kind of something clicked in my head where I realized that now everyone was really making an effort to make sure everyone felt comfortable. We definitely felt more encouraged to speak up. It just felt more like a collaborative process. But again, I think bottom line is these aren't issues that just we as models were facing. And it's also whether you're 17 or 25 or 40. Nobody should have to feel uncomfortable in their workplace regardless.
Like, for instance, I've done a ton of nudes throughout my career, you know, with Herb Ritz and Helmet maybe, but I never ever felt bad about it except for one time. And it was because it wasn't supposed to be a nude, and I kind of felt like a little pressured into it. And this guy kind of, I don't know, he just kind of, it felt not right. And those are the only ones I regret. And they're actually not even full nudes. It was like from the back, sort of. But I didn't vote myself in. And I think that's the thing, is like that, that idea of voting yourself in is very important in any, you know, any situation. Sometimes it's like, even, you know, I've had times where they wanted me to hold a gun, and I was like, yeah, I don't really feel good about this. Or someone wanted to tape my face once, and I was like, don't feel good about this. So, you know, and sometimes they don't like that you say no, but to your point, now I think models feel more empowered to say no.
Yeah, and I think if anything, that's definitely a positive change, is just that we feel like there is more space for us to speak up, because at the end of the day, you know, we are the ones who have to take responsibility for the images, as well as everyone else on this shoot. But, you know, whatever decision is made that day, I want to know that, you know, I'm falling asleep confident with my decisions, because it is, you know,
Your face.
Your face and your body and your life. You know, you never pushed me into the industry, and it was a decision that you let me make on my own. And obviously we're so supportive and helped so much, but I also didn't want to start until I felt self-confident enough. And, you know, like I knew myself enough to protect myself. But yeah, it is the most amazing industry. I've never, you know, where else can you get so many creative minds in one room? Like even today, sitting here with everyone and being able to travel to all of these amazing places. I can't imagine ever for a second taking any of it for granted.
Modeling is like a hard job for kids to understand. I remember my son telling his preschool that I didn't work because I guess I didn't have like a normal job that he understood. Plus, I didn't work every single day. So, and I think you talk about this in your Vogue piece that you wrote, is that, you know, I would wash my hair and makeup off the second I came home. So it was like, they really just saw me as mom, and they didn't understand sometimes why we were, like, paparazzi were following us. And how do you explain to a 5-year-old why paparazzi is following you? It still doesn't make sense to me. So, then I was on like Wizards of Waverly Place, and my kids thought that was cool. That was like the first time that I was famous to my kids.
That was the
right?
first time where I was like,
wait,
I don't really know
Selena
what you
Gomez
do.
knows who you
I was like, I don't really know what you do.
Right. At an age where often like your 18-year-old daughter is like, doesn't necessarily want to listen to anything you have to say. This has been something that's brought us closer, because she also can't say, Mom, you don't know what you're talking about. About this. And about my captions on Instagram, you also say that. And she's right, by the way. I defer to her on any social media.
We're learning things from each other every single day.
But it's a fun journey for us to be on, and I just went to Paris for the Peter Lindbergh Memorial, but also I went to the Saint Laurent show, and we went to the party afterwards, and it was incredible for me as a mom to see Kaya like totally feeling comfortable in this world, in her element. Like that was a really great trip, I think, for both of us.
It was, and I think when I first started, I was so, careful to be like, I don't know if you should come to this, and I definitely wanted it to be my own thing. But now I'm so happy that she's around, and I'm like, oh, come stay for the show. Like she wasn't even gonna stay. I was like, please come and stay, and it'll be fun. Now it's definitely brought us so much closer, and for that, I'm eternally grateful to this industry for doing that.